Okay, so before we talk about hypothalamus, let's take a look at this example that we have here. Here we have a thermostat. And let's say in our house we've set the temperature for thermostat to be at 69 degrees. So let's say it's summer outside and the temperature starts rising, starts going to 70, 71. Well, what do you think is going to happen? So this thermostat here probably has a sensor and it will detect that the temperature is rising. So what is it going to do? It's going to then kick in and turn on the AC, which will bring the temperature down. Now let's say we have the opposite. Let's say it's really cold outside and it's winter time and the temperature starts decreasing. It starts going to 68, 67. Well, what do you think is going to happen then? Well, again, we have a sensor here. It will detect the temperature is dropping and then it's going to kick on the heater. It will kick on the heater and the temperature will start rising again until it gets to 69 degrees, right? So just like that, we have our hypothalamus in our body, which which regulates our internal balance of the body. And some of the things that it regulates are just temperature, our blood pressure, thirst, hunger, mood, and many other things. So let's take a look at this extremely anatomically inaccurate picture that I've drawn. So now I want you to guess where the hypothalamus and the pituitary glands are. And I promise if you get it wrong, I won't judge you or I won't be mad at you. Okay? So you have 3 seconds to guess where the glands are. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So if you picked this area, good job. Give yourselves a pat on your back. This is correct. So let's zoom into it. Now let's label it first. Here we have the hypothalamus. We have the hypothalamus. Here we have the optic chiasm. This right here is known as infundibular stalk. Here we have the anterior pituitary, and here we have the posterior pituitary. I remember as a med student, when I first saw this, I used to get really confused towards what side is anterior and what side is posterior. So here's the trick. Whatever side the optic chiasm is at, that's the side of the anterior pituitary. And the opposite is posterior pituitary. So anterior pituitary is also known as the adenohypophysis. Adenohypophysis. And the posterior is also known as neurohypophysis. So these two glands come from different embryologic origins. Anterior gland comes from something known as Rathke's pouch. Rathke's pouch. And Rathke's pouch comes from oral ectoderm. So our anterior pituitary here is made up of what tissue? It's made up of epithelial tissue. What about posterior pituitary? So posterior pituitary is an extension of hypothalamus right here. And it comes from neuroectoderm. So what kind of tissue do you think this is? So our anterior is epithelial tissue. So our neuroectoderm is nervous tissues. So how does the hypothalamus communicate with the anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary? So let's take posterior pituitary, for example. Here we have the hormone is synthesized here, and then it makes its way down and stored in the nerve terminal. This is called the cell body, and this is the terminal, nerve terminal or axon terminal. So whenever there is a stimulus, the signal will travel down here to the nerve terminal and then release the hormone. That's how the hypothalamus and posterior pituitary communicates. But what about anterior pituitary? Let's say, for example, the hormone will be synthesized here and be stored here. And whenever it gets a signal, this nerve gets a signal, it will release its hormone to something known as the portal circulation, the hypothalamus hypophyseal portal circulation, and then travel down, and it will exit in the anterior pituitary and then attach to whatever cell it's supposed to attach, right? But let's pause here for a quick second and let's take a look at what exactly is a portal circulation. Does a portal circulation exist because our body just hates medical students and it just loves making our life miserable? Or there's some other reason? Let's read the definition of a portal circulation. And that is, it's a special type of blood circulation where blood flows through two capillary beds connected by veins before returning to the heart. So this is the first capillary bed. This one is the second capillary bed, and is connected by this little vein. So what is the function? Let's also take a look at what is the function of capillary bed versus a vein. So function of capillaries is to exchange. The function of the capillaries is to exchange. It could be exchange hormones, nutrition, or waste products, right? But vein is to transport. Blood from one organ to the other. In this case, it's hypothalamus to the anterior pituitary. So to understand this better, let's take a look at a hypothetical situation. Let's say our hypothalamus and pituitary were disconnected by a single vein. So what's the problem here? Why does it not work? Well, remember, the function of vein is to transport, and in the hypothalamus we need to take in from the hormone, and then it needs to be released here, right? So the problem is the hormone never gets a chance to travel down to the anterior pituitary. It never gets a chance to enter the blood circulation. Let's take a look at another hypothetical situation. Let's say this is a big capillary bed. Is this connected by capillary beds? So what's the problem here? The problem is that if the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary were just connected by capillary beds, be very inefficient because the hormone can exit anywhere down this line, can get out wherever it wants to. And that makes it very inefficient. So I hope this has made it a lot more clear as to why this portal system exists. All right, now let's go over the hormones of the hypothalamus. Firstly, we have ADH, also known as vasopressin. So this is made by this nucleus right here. Vasopressin is made by a nucleus called supraoptic. It's made by supraoptic nucleus. So whenever supraoptic nucleus gets the stimulation or it gets the signal that the body is dehydrated or there's low blood volume or low blood pressure, it will then trigger the supraoptic nucleus, which will then send the signal down here and release a hormone called vasopressin. Vasopressin, or ADH, right? So now what happens? So this will make its way to the kidney. This is supposed to be the kidney. And in kidney, collecting ducts. Collecting ducts, to be specific. So in the collecting ducts, it will release something called aquaporin channels, which will then increase the water reabsorption in the kidney and decrease urine output. Next, we have oxytocin. Oxytocin is made by this nucleus here called paraventricular. So paraventricular nucleus synthesizes and stores oxytocin. So why does paraventricular release oxytocin? So whenever it gets the signal of uterine stretching or suckling, whenever it gets these stimuli, it then releases oxytocin from here. So then what is oxytocin going to do? It's going to make its way. It can make its way to two organs. One is the uterus. Another is the breast. And what is it going to do in the uterus? It's going to cause uterine contractions. And in the breast, it leads to milk ejection during breastfeeding. So I always used to get confused between prolactin and oxytocin as into what the job is. So the job of prolactin is to synthesize, produce milk, but oxytocin is to eject it, right? So one of the ways I remember is both in the uterus and breast, it ejects stuff. So in the uterus, it will eject the baby. In the breast, it will eject milk. Next, we have GHRH. So this nucleus synthesizes GHRH, and that is called paraventricular. So paraventricular synthesizes and stores the GHRH. Whenever it gets a signal, it will release it in the portal circulation, which will then make its way down here. And here is going to act on two different cells. So first is thyrotropes. And the other here, this one is lactotrophs. So in the thyrotropes, it will stimulate it to synthesize and release TSH, and in the lactotropes, it will stimulate it to release prolactin. Next, we have CRH. So what nucleus synthesizes CRH? That is paraventricular. So paraventricular also synthesizes CRH. And whenever it gets a stimulus, which will be either stress or low cortisol, it will release CRH into this portal circulation, the hypothalamus hypophyseal portal circulation, and it will make its way down here, come out, and target these cells. Now, what are these cells? These are corticotrophs. What's the job of corticotrophs? To synthesize and release ACTH. Next, we have GnRH. So it's made this nucleus called preoptic nucleus. And so whenever it is stimulated, it will be released in the portal circulation, make its way down here, and target these cells. Where are these cells? Gonadotrophs. So what will gonadotrophs release? FSH and LH. Stands for follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Okay, so next we have GHRH, also known as growth hormone releasing hormone. So the nucleus that synthesizes this hormone is called arcuate nucleus. So whenever there's a signal, whenever it's triggered, it will release the hormone here, which will make its way down to the anterior pituitary and target this cell. What is this cell called? It's called the somatotroph. And so what will the somatotrophs release? They release growth hormone. So next we have growth hormone inhibiting hormone. This is also known as somatostatin. So this is synthesized by the nucleus called periventricular. So as soon as it gets a signal, it will release GHRH here, and which will make its way down here and target, here in the anterior pituitary, it will target two different cells. What are these cells called? First one obviously is the somatotrophs, and the other is thyrotrophs. So it will inhibit both of them from making, so it will inhibit the release of growth hormone, and here inhibit the release of TSH. Next we have dopamine. So dopamine is also made by arcuate nucleus. So whenever it gets a signal, it will release its hormone here in the portal circulation, make its way down here to anterior pituitary and target two cells. So just like growth hormone inhibiting hormone, dopamine will also inhibit two different cells. Now, what are these cells? These are lactotrophs and thyrotrophs. So dopamine will inhibit lactotrophs from synthesizing prolactin. And dopamine will inhibit thyrotrophs from making TSH. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you found it helpful, make sure to like and subscribe and share with someone who might be struggling in this topic. Go make their day.